At a first glance, you might be looking at this and being like, well, what in the actual living hell is this, and why do I need to care about it? Well, let me introduce you to the palace. This thing is ridiculously powerful. Comes from an epic DLC as well, another one that I recommend. But let's talk about it first. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Anno 1800 Beginner's Guide series. I hope you all are doing well today. I just want to start off the video by saying if you guys haven't joined the Discord, please consider doing so. The link is in the description and on the main channel page. I'm really wanting to start up a whole bunch of community-based events, and I would definitely love for you to be a part of them. If the link does not work, please let me know. I will generate a new one, let everyone know, and update it on every single video as well. Additionally, with that, there is an Instagram if you're curious about what's happening over there too. The links are in the exact same location. So the palace, very interesting building to start off. It is massive. This is true endgame. It is very similar to that of what we experienced with the haciendas, except on a massive scale. Okay. Now, as mentioned, this comes from the Seat of Power DLC, and the palace itself is unlocked when you reach investors. Again, saying that it is indeed endgame related. Now let's talk about it a little bit. So when you actually go to find this thing, you're going to have to go to the construction menu, and it is this icon right over here. And normally, if you haven't built a palace before, only the first icon is going to be available for you. The rest are going to be grayed out, similar to the local department, which we'll talk about later. Do note that putting this building down is actually going to cost you 1 million coins and a decent amount of resources, construction materials specifically. So make sure your economy is stable, make sure everything is working well before you actually invest in this, because the maintenance cost for this is also 4.5k. Not really easy to manage at a certain time in the game. I'm pretty sure you can all agree with that one. So the palace, immediately when we clicked on it, you'll notice that the street turned green. And that means that everything that this green road is essentially attached to is under the influence of the palace and the policies that you put in place. We'll talk about the policies momentarily, but I want to show you a palace of this size is capable of almost completely covering an island of this size, right? And if you're curious where this island is from, and if you're just now finding me, this is part of my expert campaign. The link is also going to be in the description and is most likely going to be at the end of the video as a clickable link for the playlist itself. And what we are essentially trying to do here is expand upon our global population to the point that the green lines can actually reach over here, the farthest point being this town hall, okay? And there's a reason for that, which we will talk about right now. With the palace itself, there are different policies that you can enact, and these policies are specifically set for your island. Do note, though, you can only build one palace per session. So the position and the place that you put it in is very important. Normally, you wouldn't want to put it back here because it becomes a little bit more difficult to actually get the entire area of effect for your settlement like this. So what a lot of Anno players will do instead is put a palace like kind of in the middle of their cities, and that way the effect is actually going to reach everywhere a lot better. But for our purposes, because I throw in roleplay with my campaign, I wanted it all the way back here, and that's totally fine. I'm just going to boost up my population, which is how you actually gain additional palace wings. If you hover over your icon in the top left-hand corner, you'll notice it says next profile level. Global population, we're going to need 918,820 people in order to construct additional pylons. Just kidding. To build 2 additional palace wings. And that's how we essentially gain the palace wings. It's not going to just willy-nilly provide you with a whole bunch. No, you have to work for it. And the way you work for it is expanding your global population. It is meant for the entire session, okay? It's not just meant for here. Sometimes, like, I don't know. I thought when I got this thing for the first time, even though it said global population, I only thought it meant one settlement. And to be honest, I never really went deep dive into all these things when I was starting out, so I didn't even know this little bit of information here existed, right? And what happens is whenever you build an additional palace wing, it extends the range of the palace's influence a little bit further. So if we go over here and we hover over the palace wing like this, it'll increase the range by 2. It'll increase the attractiveness of the island plus 15. And then adding additional wings to the palace increases the range of all local departments by plus 1. That's pretty solid, okay? That's really, really solid. And all these ones, they look different, so I can actually showcase them for you. This is a normal wing, like right over here. I'll try to go somewhere so you can see it. This is a normal palace wing. This is the gate junction, so you can actually put a road through there and you can walk through there and all that good stuff. A corner piece. Then you have a junction piece like this. Across, which is nice because you can, like, maybe, for example, if we wanted to put one in the middle and then build around it, we can do that. And then you also have a really nice looking end piece, right? It really does not matter which one you build. They're all going to have the exact same effect. So this goes back to Devin's comment where she mentioned that I want to get better with beautification. I want to learn more about it. This is one good way that you can play around with it, because everything that I have built around the palace here is all just beautification purposes. They have absolutely nothing to do with the palace itself. So what does have to do with the palace itself, though, are the different departments. I'm going to go over them briefly, but I'll do it on a somewhat slow so you guys can take a look at the different policies that are in there. So let's start with the Department of Administration. I like to go for the +1 item slot for town halls, because town halls are very powerful buildings, as we've discussed before, and getting one additional slot for an additional specialist in them is going to be very powerful to help our citizens have what they need and the happiness that they require. An argument could be made that 30% reduced need for all foods is also a thing, but, you know, honestly, this particular city does not consume a majority of those. It's more like half, little less than half. So I don't feel like reducing it by 30% is going to be that impactful. Then you can go over to the Department of Culture. We haven't really discussed cultural related buildings quite yet in the guide series, but that it is on the to-do list. What this essentially does is it boosts the zoos, the museums, the botanical gardens, your public mooring, and World's Fair. And mostly with the public moorings, for example, it would help you get a lot of really good specialists coming in. So if you want some legendaries, this will definitely help you in doing that. Then you have the Department of Labor, which is set mostly for trade unions, farms, and your heavy factories. Normally, at least for me, I don't tend to have these on the island that the palace is located, so I don't really focus on these. But Rantium right now has an abundance of mines, so I want to utilize all that with the trade unions, so we can get an additional slot in there and make them even more powerful, for example. Department of Welfare deals with power, happiness, and additional goods consumption reductions. Really, it's a toss-up between the City Wide Web Act and the Late License Act. The reason for why I went with the +15 area of influence for power plants is because this city is relying on Arctic gas 150%, okay? Nothing with oil. That means there are a set amount of power plants, and I have to make sure that the ranges are enough. The 20% need for all drinks is also a very, very good one, too. Mostly when it deals with the coffee, they go through a bunch of coffee, okay, at the late ends of the game. So definitely a sleeper pick right over there. Or heck, even the Citywide Web Act could be a sleeper pick. Really depends. Department of Trade, I don't really focus on this one too much. I really get kind of default for the +50 tons island storage capacity per depot. The reason for this is just because I don't tend to favor... Now, this is my play style. It really depends for you. If yours is any different, of course, please let me know. The island source capacity is always going to be the most important one for me, but the fuel reserves for you might actually be a good one. Or the +1 item slot for harbor master offices. You can really become a trade demon with that, I guess. Normally, you wouldn't have your shipyards and whatnot where these things can be a little bit more effective on the island that you have a palace. But again, it's really your playstyle. I normally don't go for that one for harbor masters. I tend to favor town halls and trade unions. The naval logistics act is also a pretty good one for loading speeds. If you want your ships to get in and get out fast, it's pretty good. Now, just to bring this all to a close, there is also the local department. And the local department can be built on other islands. So, like, for example, right here on Zerexalon, we have one built. And the local department is essentially an extension of your will, your palace's will, your policies. Just because you've enacted them on your main island where the palace is does not mean that these guys are going to exactly follow suit. But what they will follow suit in is their radius, right? And of course, I do have a freaking flu here. Why wouldn't I have something wrong happening when I'm trying to make a guide, right? The range of the local department, as per the wiki, is essentially half of the radius, half of the total radius and extension of the palace. So, for all intents and purposes, a palace that's 128 wings is capable of having a local department completely cover an island of this size. The only part where it hasn't fully covered is right over here, but for everywhere else, it's doing its thing. And over here, I've enacted a policy for the Department of Labor for extra goods from heavy factories because there are a bunch of advanced weapon facilities here, and I'm trading them like no tomorrow. So what this essentially does, if you go and click on it, one free advanced weapon every 3 cycles. That's why they're always full up in here. And that is, again, one of the benefits of having a palace. It can drastically change your production levels to a massive degree on different islands. Not only that, it can help you with regards to your settlements themselves. So like over here, to show you guys an industrial island, another idea of an industrial island, we have a local department right over here that's boosting the area of influence for all power plants. That just helps get a whole bunch more of these buildings actually have electricity, and that's just fantastic overall. But then you have local departments like the one we have here on Constantinople that are focused mostly on like the welfare of the people. And in this case, we're using the 30% reduction need for all foods here. And this is mostly around the radius of town halls. So the ones who aren't around town halls are not going to be getting this benefit. The way that you can tell is when they're actually a turquoise color. So that is essentially what the palace does, what the local departments do. It is a very, very, very powerful DLC. Would I recommend it above like getting the Bright Harvest DLC? Probably not, because Bright Harvest works all throughout the game. This one is more endgame related. But definitely let me know what you guys think. If you're planning on getting this, please let me know. If you have any additional questions, please let me know. I definitely want to make sure I answer everybody's questions. We went through the mountain and all that good stuff. Again, the Discord link and Instagram links are in the description. And as always, thank you all so very much for joining me on this episode, the Beginner's Guide series. Please consider like, commenting, subscribing, hitting that bell button, sharing it with your friends. And I'll catch you on the next episode, my Rantians.